What if the secret to massively increasing your oil palm yield isn't, adding more chemical fertilizer, but waking up what's already asleep in your soil? I mean, we have a fascinating breakdown today, and I want you to know right now, if you stick around till the end of this deep dive, you are going to get the exact actionable takeaway on how to apply this biological strategy in your own fields tomorrow morning. Welcome to another podcast episode brought to you by AGS Agriculture Global Solutions, where we discuss sustainable oil palm cultivation topics. Today, we are taking a really hard look at the very foundation of your plantation, and we're pulling our insights from a highly revealing 2026 research paper published in the Journal of the Saudi Society of Agricultural Sciences.
Yeah, and our mission today is really to take a very dense piece of agricultural science, all the raw data, the microbial mechanisms, the soil chemistry, and translate that directly into practical field instructions. We're focusing entirely on how you can protect the long-term health and, well, the profitability of your plantation. Because any grower with dirt under their boots knows that the real battle for your yield is fought completely underground long before a fruit bunch ever even forms.
Right, absolutely. So let's set the stage here, because before we can introduce this biological solution, which honestly fundamentally changes how we view dirt, we have to confront the physical problem staring down almost every oil palm farmer right now.
Exactly.
When you walk the rows of a mature plantation and you see palms that are underperforming, I mean, the knee-jerk reaction is almost always, they need more food, let's order another round of synthetic NPK. But from what I'm reading in this research, throwing more conventional fertilizer at the problem is actually making the underlying condition worse.
It really is. The underlying condition is severe soil degradation. And that's driven by decades of repetitive farming and, over-reliance on those exact chemical fertilizers.
Yeah.
When we talk about soil health in an oil palm context, the absolute most critical metric is soil acidity. We measure this through pH. So for an oil palm to truly thrive, the soil pH needs to sit in a very specific narrow window between 5.0 and 5.8.
Okay, between 5.0 and 5.8. But over time, the constant application of synthetic salts dries that pH down, right?
Yeah.
It makes the soil highly acidic.
Right, it pushes it way down.
And when that pH drops below 5.0, something terrible happens to the chemistry of the soil itself. It's not just that the soil is, what do they call it, sour? It's that the nutrients fundamentally lock up.
Yeah, the visual of locking up is incredibly accurate there. When soil becomes overly acidic, elements naturally present in the earth, specifically aluminum and iron, they become highly reactive.
Oh.
They seek out the essential nutrients you are paying good money to apply, like phosphorus, for instance. And they form these complex, insoluble molecular bonds. They literally fuse together. And the palm roots are simply not strong enough to break those molecular bonds apart.
So I picture it like serving a massive, incredibly expensive feast to a person whose mouth is taped shut.
That's exactly what it is.
You can dump all the chemical fertilizer you want on the ground, you can run your budgets red, but the palms simply cannot absorb it. It's just sitting there in the dirt, trapped inside these tiny chemical rocks. So if I'm a farmer looking at my harvest projections, how does this invisible chemical lockout actually impact my operation? I mean, on a practical level.
Well, the most immediate impact is a plummet in the reproductive energy of the plant. A palm might sustain a reasonably green canopy for a while by, cannibalizing its own reserves.
Yeah.
But fruit development requires massive amounts of immediate available energy. When the roots cannot pull phosphorus and other nutrients because they're bound to aluminum, the plant basically abandons fruit production to prioritize its own basic survival.
Wow, so it just shuts down the factory.
Yes. You will experience a direct compounding reduction in your yield, and that's measured strictly in tons per hectare. You're essentially bleeding capital twice, once on the synthetic fertilizer that became trapped in the soil, and again on the fruit bunches that never developed.
That is brutal. And by the way, soil testing for acidity and nutrient content is essential. And remember leaf testing when monitoring nutrient uptake, because you cannot fix a chemical lockout if you don't know your baseline metrics, right?
Totally. You need that data.
But let's assume a farmer has run the tests. The reports come back, the pH is hovering at, let's say, 4.2, and the soil is severely degraded. The instinct is to maybe dump lime or just keep pushing chemicals, but adding more synthetic inputs to a system broken by synthetic inputs is, well, a dead end.
Completely. You cannot override a biological matrix failure with brute chemical force. When the soil structure is deeply acidic and locked up, you need an intervention that can actively re-engineer the soil chemistry over time.
Which brings us to the biological mechanism at the center of this deep dive. We're talking about Painobacillus species. and I'll just refer to it as paenobacillus, or simply the bacteria or the biofertilizer going forward.
Sounds good.
Out in the field, this typically applied to the soil via diluted granules or liquid drenches right around the root zone. But reading through the study, I immediately hit a logical wall.
Oh, yeah. What is that?
If the soil is highly acidic, let's say that hostile 4.2 pH, how does introducing a microscopic bacteria fix that? The environment is toxic. How does a living organism survive that, let alone change the fundamental chemistry of an entire field?
Yeah, the mechanism here is fascinating because it relies on biological buffering. Let's look at the field-level reality of what happens when these bacteria colonize the root zone. They don't just exist passively in the dirt. They actually operate as active biochemical factories. So to survive and alter their environment, they begin to secrete specific organic acids, primarily citric acid and lactic acid, along with highly specialized enzymes.
Wait, hold on. I need to stop you there because that makes zero sense on the surface.
How so?
The soil is already too acidic, right?
Yeah.
It's toxic because of low pH, and the bacteria's response is to secrete more acid. I mean, how does adding citric acid to an acidic field solve the problem?
It sounds like a total paradox, I know, but we have to distinguish between harsh chemical acidity and organic buffering acids. The citric and lactic acids secreted by paenobacillus act as chelating agents.
Chelating agents. Let's break down chelating agent for a second. What does that actually mean?
Think of a chelating agent as a microscopic chemical claw.
Okay, a claw.
Yeah. When the bacteria release these organic acids, the molecular claws specifically seek out the toxic aluminum and iron that are currently holding your nutrients hostage. The organic acid wraps around the aluminum, binds to it, and forcibly separates it from the phosphorus and other nutrients.
Oh, wow. So the bacteria uses its own organic acid to pry the toxic metals away from the plant food.
Correct.
Right?
And by neutralizing those reactive metals, the surrounding soil chemistry fundamentally shifts. The toxicity drops.
Right.
And simultaneously, the enzymes they release begin breaking down surrounding organic matter, which releases alkaline compounds. So the combination of the chemical claws removing the heavy metals and the enzymes processing organic matter safely and naturally pulls the soil pH right back into that optimal 5.0 to 5.8 sweet spot.
That is incredible, but it obviously doesn't happen overnight. I mean, if I apply this biofertilizer tomorrow, I shouldn't expect to see a 5.5 pH on Friday, right?
No, definitely not. The data shows a definitive 1 to 3 month adaptation period. This is biological engineering, not a synthetic flush.
Right. Biology takes time.
Exactly. The bacteria need time to multiply, establish their colonies, and secrete enough organic acids to actually restructure the soil profile.
Okay, so let's fast forward 2 months. The bacteria have colonized the root zone. The chemical claws have neutralized the aluminum. The tape is finally off the palm's mouth. The physical environment is corrected.
Yep.
But a corrected environment doesn't automatically mean the plant is fed. How does this biological engine actually pump nutrients into the palm roots?
To understand the nutrient delivery, we have to look at electrical conductivity, or EC. When you read a soil report, electrical conductivity measures the concentration of salts and active ions in the soil solution.
I always thought of EC as just a warning sign for salt buildup. You know, like if the EC gets too high, the soil is too saline, which burns the roots and dehydrates the plant.
Well, high EC from synthetic salt buildup is absolutely a hazard, yes.
Yeah.
For oil palm, you want your EC to stay safely below 1,000 microsiemens per centimeter. However, a healthy EC is entirely necessary. The active ions measured by EC act as the available nutrient source for the plant. It's essentially a measurement of how much raw fuel is actively flowing in the lines ready for the palm to consume. What this biofertilizer does is naturally elevate the EC within that safe sub-1,000 range.
And it does this without adding synthetic salts.
Right. The bacteria accelerate the decomposition of organic matter that is already sitting in your field. So they break down dead feeder roots, fallen fronds, organic debris, and they transform that inert biomass into highly active plant-available ions.
So it's basically a free 247 underground fertilizer factory.
Exactly.
And the sheer volume of macronutrients this process unlocks is staggering. The paper highlights major unlocks for carbon, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and sulfur. But the one that really caught my attention is the nitrogen.
Yeah.
The researchers classify these as diacetrophic bacteria. Can you unpack that? Because the way they process nitrogen sounds like science fiction.
It really does. The nitrogen mechanism is arguably the most valuable aspect of this biology. Atmospheric air is roughly 78% nitrogen gas.
Okay.
That gas is constantly filtering down into the microscopic air pockets inside your soil. But plants cannot breathe nitrogen gas. The nitrogen atoms in the air are locked together by a super strong triple bond. The palm roots are surrounded by nitrogen, but they can't access a single molecule of it.
Water. Water everywhere, but not a drop to drink.
Exactly the same principle. But diazotrophic bacteria, like certain strains of Painobacillus, possess a unique enzyme called nitrogenase.
Nitrogenase.
Yeah, this enzyme acts like a microscopic crowbar. The bacteria literally inhale the useless nitrogen gas from the soil pockets, use the enzyme to pry that triple bond apart, and attach hydrogen to it.
Wow.
And then they exhale it directly into the root zone as ammonium, which is a form of nitrogen the oil palm can instantly absorb.
So they're functioning as microscopic air compressors, pulling free air from the dirt and manufacturing usable nitrogen fertilizer right against the root wall. Given how expensive synthetic nitrogen is right now, I mean, having a biological workforce manufacturing it on site is a massive operational advantage.
Oh, the cost savings on nitrogen alone justify the transition for many growers. But beyond the nitrogen cycle, the unlocking of sulfur deserves equal attention. Sulfur is frequently overshadowed by nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium,
Yeah, I rarely hear farmers stressing over their sulfur applications. It's always NPK, NPK.
which is a huge missed opportunity because these bacteria are incredibly efficient at oxidizing native sulfur in the soil. And for an oil palm, sulfur is the foundational building block for forming lipids.
And lipids are fats.
Yes, the availability of oxidized sulfur directly increases the synthesis of fatty acids and triglycerides inside the developing oil palm seeds.
Oh, I see. So connecting the dots here, the bacteria uses enzymes to unlock the sulfur. The
Mhm.
sulfur builds the complex lipids, and those lipids are literally the crude palm oil you are extracting at the mill.
You got it.
By optimizing the biological sulfur pump underground, you are directly increasing your oil extraction rates.
Exactly. The biological engine provides the primary fuels that dictate the commercial value of your harvest. If you want higher oil yields, you need a highly functioning sulfur cycle.
All right, so the macronutrients are flowing, the main fuel lines are pumping NPK and sulfur, but the paper doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't.
It turns out this biological engine also creates the fine-tuning oils needed for the plant's internal machinery to run smoothly. The biofertilizer significantly boosts the availability of microelements, specifically zinc and copper.
Right. And the micronutrient bonus is often where plantations see the most profound, long-term shifts in overall canopy health and resilience.
Okay, I'm going to play the role of the skeptical farmer here.
Go for it.
Out in the field, we are moving tons of material. We are obsessed with the big three: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. That's what we buy by the truckload. Are trace elements like microscopic amounts of copper and zinc, are they really going to move the needle on my tons per hectare? Is a zinc boost really worth rethinking my whole soil management program?
It is a really common pushback because micronutrients are invisible to the naked eye until there is a severe deficiency. But let's look at the biological reality of copper first.
Okay.
Copper is completely non-negotiable for plant respiration. It is a core component of the electron transport chain inside the plant's cells.
Okay, explain the electron transport chain for those of us who haven't taken a biology class in 20 years. What exactly is happening inside the leaf?
Think of the electron transport chain like a bucket brigade moving raw energy inside the cell to keep the plant alive.
A bucket brigade, okay.
Yeah. Without copper, the plant doesn't have enough buckets. The entire energy transfer process slows down, and the plant essentially suffocates on its own unprocessed energy. It cannot grow no matter how much nitrogen you feed it.
Oh, wow. Okay, so copper is the bucket brigade for cellular breathing. What about zinc?
Zinc manages the photosynthetic redox processes. Photosynthesis is a violent reaction. The plant is capturing raw solar radiation and converting it into chemical energy.
Right, turning sunlight into fuel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But without regulation, that solar energy would create free radicals that destroy the leaf tissue. Zinc is the biological regulator that manages that explosive energy transfer safely.
So if the oil palm is a massive biological engine, photosynthesis is the combustion in the cylinders.
That's a great way to put it.
And if that engine stutters and misfires because it lacks the zinc to regulate the spark, your tons per hectare yield is permanently capped.
It sets an absolute ceiling on your yield. It literally does not matter if your biological factory is pumping out endless nitrogen and phosphorus. If the plant lacks the zinc to run photosynthesis effectively, or the copper to breathe, all those macronutrients are wasted. The plant simply cannot process them.
You cannot out-fertilize a micronutrient deficiency. That is a massive realization.
The data supports that completely.
Yeah.
And one of the most compelling notes from the findings is how best to deliver these microbes.
Right, because there's a specific way to apply it.
Yeah. The research observed that a mixed culture of different bacterial strains, essentially a carefully formulated cocktail of diverse biology rather than just a single isolated strain, that often produce the highest and most stable microelement gains across different soil profiles.
Really? Why does a cocktail work better than a single super strong strain?
Because soil is highly variable. I mean, the pH, moisture, and organic matter content can change drastically from one block to the next on the exact same plantation.
Oh, right.
Different bacterial strains thrive in slightly different microenvironments. So by applying a diverse biological workforce, you ensure that at least some of those strains will successfully colonize and multiply regardless of the localized soil conditions. Biodiversity creates robust, resilient results in the field.
Man, we have covered incredible ground today. We've looked at the hidden dangers of severe acidity and chemical lockout. We've broken down how Bacillus acts as a chemical claw to neutralize toxic heavy metals. We've seen how it functions as an underground air compressor for nitrogen and how it unlocks the sulfur needed to drive up oil extraction rates.
It's a lot of science.
It is. So now we need to bring this out of the theoretical silence and directly into the farmer's schedule. What are the clear, actionable field instructions a grower can take from this deep dive tomorrow morning?
It distills down to two critical instructions. Number one, tomorrow, begin actively evaluating commercial biofertilizers that contain a diverse culture of Bacillus species. As you plan your next nutrition cycle, do not simply default to another heavy round of chemical fertilizers, especially on your older degraded blocks.
Because more chemicals won't fix it.
Right. Synthetic salts will only deepen the chemical lockout. You need to actively repair the soil matrix first. And introducing this specific biology is a scientifically validated method to achieve that repair.
The first step is acknowledging that the soil is broken and sourcing the biological tools to fix it. What is the second instruction?
Number two is entirely about managing your operational expectations and setting realistic timelines. Transitioning from synthetic reliance to biological function requires patience. The study clearly demonstrates that the most significant soil metrics, the pH correction, the EC stabilization, and the nutrient unlocks, they require a 1 to 3 month adaptation period.
So what does that adaptation period actually look like to the farmer walking the rows?
Well, in month one, you likely won't see dramatic changes in the canopy. The heavy lifting is happening underground as the bacteria multiply and release their organic acids.
Right.
By month two, as the toxicity drops, you should start seeing fine, white feeder roots pushing actively through the soil matrix again.
Okay, roots are waking up.
Exactly. And by month three, the nutrient pipeline is flowing. You will see older fronds stop their premature yellowing, and the new spear leaves will emerge with robust, dark green vigor. You have to give the biology the time it needs to establish its infrastructure. It is an investment in the permanent health of your soil, not a temporary cosmetic green-up.
A 1 to 3 month wait to permanently repair your soil's digestive system. I mean, that is a trade-off any smart business owner should be willing to make, especially when the alternative is watching your fertilizer budget literally turn into useless rocks in the dirt. It really changes how you look at the ground under your boots. As you walk your plantation tomorrow, I want you to look down and ponder this. If introducing a single microscopic biological cocktail can completely restructure the toxic chemistry of degraded soil in just 90 days, what other invisible dormant allies are living in your fields right now, just waiting for the right conditions to be activated? Thanks for listening.